Hi, I listen to Yeshurun weekly and find it to be so insightful as a mother, wife, a daughter, and daughter-in-law. Thank you. I read your book more than once and I was quickly able to identify the natures of the people in my life. Since I've read your book and familiarized myself with ideas and concepts, which was a few years ago, I think I can say I learned a lot of tools on how to navigate all relationships and make even the difficult ones great. Okay, Baruch Hashem. I wanted to ask this very long question that recently occurred and hear your insight. My mother-in-law is a tough woman. Okay, I'm leaving out some of the adjectives. I've pretty much figured out the right balance of showing respect but keeping a distance in case of hurtful comments. Recently, I was caught completely off guard. I got a whole wash down in public about something that had to do with my siblings. I tried to stay calm and keep repeating that I can't explain why they did or didn't do something. They're really nice people. I don't think they want to hurt anyone, and I don't appreciate. And I find it hurtful that you're talking about my siblings this way. I think she saw how hurt I was because she came over to me later in the night to tell me that I shouldn't take it personal. I was still in shock, so I really didn't know how to answer. That night I came home and literally cried myself to sleep. All the hurtful comments that she made over the years got to me and I was at a loss. My dear and poor husband, seeing me so hurt, was ready to call her and tell her that what she did was awful. I told him to hold off, we'll sleep it over, and see how we wake up. The next morning I decided to write her a letter, which I knew I wouldn't send. It was a few pages long, pouring out my heart and basically saying that you can say and think whatever you want about my family, but please don't tell me. I really felt that I couldn't face her again. And with the upcoming Simcha again, I didn't feel that it would go well. I get over things pretty quickly, but 2 days later, it was still the only thing on my mind. My husband decided, based on some people that encouraged him, to call his mother and tell her that she can't hurt me in public like that. When he told his mother I'm still hurt, she washed it away as if I'm the crazy one, telling him she doesn't need to feel hurt, and she should stick up for me like she sticks up for her siblings. When he saw the conversation going in circles, and she still didn't even feel bad for what she did, he told her he needed to go. She got all flustered and said, let's figure it out and come to some kind of agreement. And he answered her that with you there's no coming to an agreement. We were both literally shaking after this phone call. My husband is not a confrontational person at all. He would never raise his voice or do anything, and he would do anything to please anyone. But when I heard that she doesn't even regret what she did, I got even more upset. I was ready to skip joining the next Simcha. It's so hard for me to face her and be nice to her when she doesn't care and ask about my feelings. In the end, my husband told me to tell my parents about what's going on. I guess he knew that they would calm me down and not let it get to me, and who cares what she says about my family, I know they're great, and he was right. I cried out my heart to them, and they were there to comfort me. However, they told me that I should not skip the Simcha. My father told me it's better to have a cold peace than a warm fight. He told me to write myself a paper that I should read before leaving about how I can do this, and my family supporting, and Baruch Hashem, it passed. Now it seems I won't have to face her until the next Yom Tov. But I'm thinking, going forward, if she hurts me again, what's the way to respond in the moment? How can I tell her to stop? When she was screaming at me, and I said, "Oi, please don't say that," she got even madder and said, do you ever experience the pain that I'm experiencing? Don't tell me how to feel. And number two, if I really don't feel like ever going again, which I know would be hard for my husband, how does this relationship look in good times? My dream would be to sit with her and sort out the feelings. However, I know that would just get nowhere. So I pretend like nothing happened and act as if I'm good, or do I still show that I'm hurt? How does one get the message over to such people that they hurt them? Since feelings and emotions are taboo, I feel like she'll only understand big steps, like not coming or telling her that we're not going to come. I know this is long, I feel sorry. I feel like you would really get it and be able to guide us in the right direction. Thank you for taking the time. As a follow-up to this letter, the same person wrote that she recently saw a share of mine, which was really helpful. I see the share ID number is 211014. I looked it up. I think it's Parshas Va'era or Vayera of a year before that, maybe. A year of last year. It was so refreshing to hear that no one can hurt me without Hashem, and there's no excuse for me to hurt her back. However, I'm still wondering, was a boundary overstepped? How should I and my husband react to such underhanded comments in the future? Also, if I still don't feel like I can face her, but I really don't want to not go, I'm not looking to cut contact, what should I do? Push myself? Should my husband say that it's hard for me to come over? Any other chizuk on how to get over hurt feelings and pain? I still get random attacks when she gets into my head, and I could cry over what happened. Maybe I'm just pained over the way this relationship turned out, that it's not what I envisioned my relationship with my mother-in-law to be. My husband is at a loss as well. Should he talk to someone? I feel bad crying to him about it because after all, it's his mother, and I don't want to get in between their relationship. If you can give any guidance, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, so being that I'm talking to a public, obviously, right? So as I mentioned often, just hearing a letter like this, it gives perspective. I don't know how many people out there listening to this are mother-in-laws, and it's not only a mother-in-law issue, but this is the example that we're talking about over here. And sometimes it's very helpful for people out there to realize what it sounds like on the other side, which means, when somebody is confronting you and saying, "Oh, you just hurt my feelings," of course you get defensive and you explain why you didn't hurt their feelings. But when you hear the way someone's telling it to a third party, and maybe it is making sense. Maybe what I'm hearing now is something that I should really relate to and learn from. So I don't think it's ever helpful to give someone a share and say, "Listen to this share, you'll realize you made a mistake." Because again, that becomes personal. But sometimes when you hear it on the outside, you realize, maybe it's true. Maybe I'm not nice to my daughter-in-law, or maybe I should be more considerate, etc. And like I said, it's not only mother-in-laws, not only daughter-in-laws, but it's definitely something that could be helpful when people hear it spoken about. Just hearing the question. Just hearing the question and knowing that there are people who say things that are very hurtful, and there are people that are very hurt. I think it's helpful. It's the same thing, by the way, with my book. People ask me sometimes if they should give my book to someone and say, "Look, in this book it says that you're a difficult person." I say, I don't think it's going to help you when you give the book to someone and you're the one telling it to them. They're probably not going to see anything that you're seeing in the same book. But it's possible that if they pick up the book on their own and they read it and they realize, this really does describe the things that I do and say. And that I heard many times. People pick up my book in the store, or they notice it at home or whatever, and they don't think that anyone had a message for them. They sometimes come to a certain amount of awareness. So I think that the same thing over here, when people hear this spoken about, it's always just a reality check. Could somebody maybe say this about me? Even if I think that they're wrong? Could it be that that's how some people feel? Could it be that I'm not seeing it correctly? I think that's very important. It happens to be, the ironic part is that the people who tell others to care less, right? Like this mother-in-law saying, why do you care so much? Or stop telling me, like the people who are telling their son, like why she's so hurt, she should get over it, etc. She doesn't need to feel hurt, right? It's ironic that those are the people that get the most hurt, and those are the people that you can't tell anything. The Gemara talks about that. Shloisha Paki and Kusha, Paki and Ru. If you have to do with a kuten, there are people that you don't have to do with them, because if they hurt you, they're exempt, and if you hurt them, then you're always at fault. So sometimes it's sad that the people who are allowed to get the most hurt are the ones that are going to tell you not to get hurt. So go do something about it. If somebody's telling you don't get hurt, and they also don't get hurt, it's not an excuse. The fact that I have thick skin and I don't get hurt doesn't mean I'm allowed to hurt you. But at least you can relate to what I'm telling you. Don't get so hurt because I can't relate to these kind of feelings. I don't get hurt. I don't take it personal. Why are you taking it personal? It's not an excuse, but at least it makes sense. But sadly, very often it's those that get the most hurt and the most offended and never apologize and are always right, that somehow just don't understand why you're allowed to be hurt. And that's how it is sometimes. I'll also mention a feedback that somebody sent me last week to a shir. I think it was from Rabbi Chaim Volozhin. I said a shir last week in the Yiddish shir. I think it was about criticizing, giving misser, rebuking someone. So I said that you have to be careful how you say it and if you should say it, and think about how, when, if, who to say what to, and very often the right thing to do is not to say anything. So somebody sent me a nice feedback. I think it was from Rabbi Chaim Volozhin, or Chaim. He writes that if a person could tell someone something nicely, if he can say it in the right way, it will be taken well, then he should say it. And if he can't, even just because that's his nature, he doesn't know how to say it softly, then he's exempt from being Mekayim Hechech Techiach. The Torah says you have to tell someone something, right? But if you can't say it in a nice way and it won't be taken well, then don't say it. Yeah, but I have to say it. No, you don't have to say it. You thought you had to say it, but if you can't come up with the right way that it will be taken well, you don't have to say it. It doesn't say that, if it's very, very hard for you, just try even harder. No. If it's very, very hard for you, don't say it. So I'm just mentioning this here. First of all, I appreciate the feedback, but very often you'll have a mother-in-law or a father-in-law or anyone, parents, or whoever it is, a husband, a wife, telling someone saying something, and even when they hear, maybe your daughter-in-law will be hurt. Yeah, but I have to say it. You don't have to say it. Yeah, but she has to hear it. She doesn't have to hear it. Saying something has to be done if it could be said right, and it's not only if that person could take it; it's if you could say it the right way. And if you say it in a way that's being hurtful, it's being critical, it's sounding offensive, then you don't have to say it. I'll mention another interesting feedback, and this was, interestingly, on an article I wrote in the Moment magazine. I'll be honest, I didn't even remember what the article was about, but somebody showed me a letter to the editor that was addressing me. You wrote something about in-laws, about a father-in-law, mother-in-law. I think it was probably about a father-in-law. How somebody got so offended. I think it's important to realize that if that person would have a healthy self-esteem, if that person would be confident enough, if that person would be happy enough with himself, then he wouldn't be so offended by a comment that a father-in-law, mother-in-law made. They wouldn't get so bent out of shape from it. It's important to realize that very often these things are only affecting those that are very weak or very whatever. So I didn't respond, but I'm just mentioning it here. It's very wrong. It's a very wrong idea, and we find this idea also with children that are bullied in cheder in school. Right? Sometimes people have that thing. If you're being bullied, we're going to teach you how to not care. We're going to teach the kid who's being trampled, to be more, to be stronger, to be more confident, to care less, not to be so offended by it, as if that's the education. It's very wrong. If any teacher or principal or parent is noticing anyone bullying another kid, it's the responsibility of the adult in charge to make it a safe environment and make sure that nobody's taking advantage of someone else. Right? The vulnerable one and the weak one is not the one who's now at fault for letting it happen or for caring. It's a very big mistake. If somebody's hurting someone else, it doesn't matter if it's a parent-in-law or a child-in-law or a spouse or anyone. If someone's hurting someone, the person hurting them is wrong. It happens to be true that when people are very confident people and extremely happy with themselves maybe, and a lot of other things that some people happen to have, a very strong personality, a very thick skin and very tolerable, then they care less. It's true. But does that mean now that if somebody got hurt, so we say, listen, it's your problem, why do you get so hurt? The Torah doesn't advocate that kind of attitude. So I think it's important just to realize that if somebody's getting hurt by a comment someone else made, then they're hurt, and that comment probably shouldn't have been said. And telling them that it's your fault is not helpful or true. Now you end off asking for chizik. I mean, the chizik is like you mentioned in that other class that I gave. It's always a chizik to remember that any hurt feeling or any pain, any grief, any aggravation that we experience in this world, it's all coming from Hashem. It's all coming from Hashem. It's all some kind of either some kind of kapura or some kind of tikkun or some kind of whatever it is, and we should always have in mind that it should be. Right? All those famous stories about people that were hurt and they swallowed their pride and they were moichel someone and they had a big schis because of it. They were able to daven for something or give a brucha or yeshia. We believe in this. We believe in this. Does it mean for a second that the other person wasn't wrong? No. Does it mean that you're not supposed to tell someone how you feel that if they hurt you? Not necessarily. Torah doesn't say that. You're supposed to tell someone generally if it's going to help. Talk about that they hurt you. But it's still important to remember that it's all predestined. It's all from above. Nobody can do anything to you without Hashem deciding so. And it just makes it that much easier for us to realize that, okay, the part about me getting hurt, that's from Hashem. And there's a reason for it, and it's to my advantage, my benefit. The fact that somebody else was mean to me, that's their problem. And it is their problem. Does it mean that I should now be best friends with them? Maybe not. You don't have to be around people that are going to hurt you necessarily. But it doesn't take away from the fact that everything is with a cheshbon. And this is something we have to keep on reminding ourselves, like everything in life. Every time somebody loses money or loses opportunity or goes through any kind of pain, even when it's not someone else, then sometimes it's easier to say, okay, this is from Hashem. The stomachache is from Hashem. Nobody did anything. Nobody intended it. But we know that everything. Tanya talks about it. The idea of the kimum halal, right? Shimon ben Gaida. It's all from Hashem, and it's important to remember that at all times. Now, you start off your letter by saying that you learned from my book and from my classes how to deal with people, and with a tough mother-in-law like you have, you figured out the right balance of showing respect but keeping a distance in case of hurtful comments. Okay, now I understand that. There are relationships like that where you are respectful and you keep a distance. Sometimes there aren't better options. Clear. There are people that are very tough, without going into detail about why they're like that and how long they've been like that, if there's something they can really do to help themselves or not. Everyone goes through their own thing in this world. There are people that are just so challenging that you can be respectful and you keep a distance. And whoever gets too close to them gets hurt. That's how it's true. I'm not going to say there isn't such a thing. There are people like that. Sometimes, however, we show a certain amount of respect and keep a distance because we're afraid, and we don't realize that sometimes, with more respect in the right way, we could be less afraid, first of all. So sometimes, it's nice to say, well, I say good Shabbos and good morning, and then I keep a distance. Okay, it is respectful, and maybe it's enough. Sometimes if you'll be even more respectful, you'll have even better results, and you have less to be afraid of. Sometimes you have less to be afraid of if you know that there's nothing to be afraid of anyway. And then you don't have to keep your distance, and automatically you could interact better with someone. So I think it's just something that's always worth taking into consideration. Often you'll be feeling that you're being respectful to someone, and they don't feel that way. Yeah, I'm being respectful. I call, I do my duties, I say hello, I offer some help, but that's where I stop. I just want to make sure that I'm checking the boxes. Now, could be I'm not even obligated to do that much, and even that's coming from just the goodwill of being respectful. But always think about, does the other person feel that you're respectful? Does the other person feel that you really appreciate them, look up to them, respect them, need them, appreciate them? It could be, I don't know what the situation over here is. I'm just saying that sometimes people think they're doing it because they did just enough to not be considered disrespectful, because that's part of what they're afraid of. They don't want to be called disrespectful. But sometimes you could inch forward with caution and be more respectful to someone, and they won't want to hurt you. They're gonna like you enough and feel that you're enough on their team that they won't have this need to put you down. So it's just something to... I'm saying it because I've seen many cases, again, I don't know if that's relevant over here at all. I've seen many cases where people were respectful from a distance. In other words, it was pretty obvious that they were keeping a distance. It was pretty obvious that the amount of respect was just what they had to, and it was nice. It was maybe better than other people. It was enough not to get called out on being disrespectful, but there was so much more they could do to actually build a relationship and turn it into something better, deeper, and more connecting. That's one. But the other half of the same thing is that sometimes people being respectful and keeping a distance are doing so because they're afraid. They're afraid of like you said, they're afraid of the attack, they're afraid of the insult, they're afraid of the hurtful comment, and they don't want to deal with it. Now, they're keeping a distance because they don't know how to respond, or because they think they have to respond, so they're trying to avoid it. I think one of the most important things that's worth discussing in such situations is to know how to respond, and the answer is to not respond. If somebody's washing you down, I know it's not geschmack to listen to and you want to shut them up, especially if they're doing it in public, but very often all you have to do is listen to them and look at them and not respond. It's what's called the least reinforcing reaction. I must have mentioned this idea. It happens with children often. I didn't even remember where I heard it from. This is many years ago, where somebody was borrowing an idea from animal training when they try to get animals to do certain tricks or circus acts or whatever it is. So when an animal does the right thing, they jump, they fly, the fish, the dolphin, whoever it is, they get a prize. They get the honey, they get the prize. If they don't do the right thing, the animal, then the way to react is by doing nothing. In other words, if you hit the animal, you could confuse him. He's not sure if you hit him. It was a pat on the back, it was encouraging, it was you were upset, you were half upset, you weren't upset. If you get some reaction, sometimes they don't know, was that reaction a good one, a bad one, was it what I wanted, was it half of what I wanted, was it better than nothing? When you don't react at all, the animal sees that didn't do anything. I'm not going to do that again. It brought no reaction. And the idea was that when a child is tantruming, for example, or people are saying things that are hurtful, etc., often the least reinforcing reaction, the reaction that's going to reinforce the least this kind of behavior is when you do nothing. If somebody insults you and you insult them back, they don't like what you just did. But sometimes that's what they're riding off, Oh, so you said this, I said that. Okay, so I got some reaction, so we're interacting now, we're fighting, I like it, It's negative attention. Sometimes you just look at someone and they're washing you down and asking questions, and you just look at them and say, I don't know. And they realize that didn't fly well. And very often they're going to be the ones apologizing to you, thinking about what you just think about that. I see you didn't take it well. You must be thinking this, you must be thinking that. As opposed to when you start arguing with them, you're just pulling them deeper into the argument and the conflict, and they can't even come out of it if they want to. So I think that it's important sometimes, that instead of keeping a distance because you're afraid of what's going to happen, you don't know how to respond, and you're asking me, well, how do I respond? You don't respond. Sometimes you can just respond by saying, ouch, or that was hurtful, at most. But most often, when it comes to these kind of situations that you're describing, I think it's best to not respond, because it sounds to me, at least, that it's sometimes so uncalled for or so out of bounds that you're talking about an adult, right? You're talking about someone who will probably try to justify what they just said if they realize that it wasn't taken well, and they realize they couldn't pull you down into their negativity because they're upset at your siblings and you didn't buy it. And very often they'll go straight into, I know it's not your fault that they didn't do it, and okay, maybe I said it the wrong way. And then when they start coming forward, that's when it's easier to express yourself and say, no, I also don't think you intended to hurt me, but I really was very hurt by it. Please don't do it again. Now, even if they come back and say again, but don't take it so personal. Okay, you drop it again. So I think that's just something that will make you a little less afraid of having to deal with it, thinking that you have to come up with an argument. You have to come up with something. You don't have to. You don't have to. Unless someone's asking a question, there's no reason to answer it. Somebody's going on a rant, your siblings should be here, they shouldn't be here. Why didn't they come? Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Very often it's a rant, it's not even a question. You don't have to answer. Now, I want to give some perspective, and this is something I spoke about recently about some people who find themselves apologizing, the other person's not apologizing. Just a few weeks ago I spoke about that. It's unfortunately sad to see that some people are relatively limited. They're limited. I don't want to call it handicapped or incapable. Some people are just limited. It's very sad. And I hear this all the time from people, either about a spouse or a parent or a child. I can never get an I'm sorry. That's it. No matter what happens, I'm always the one apologizing, and I don't remember ever hearing the word I'm sorry. And even when I ask my wife or whoever it is, my boy, I would appreciate it if you apologize for what you did. I have no problem apologizing if you tell me why. People who talk like that, and sadly can't bring themselves to ever own up or ever realize that they hurt someone, it's very sad. And the reason why I'm saying it's sad is not because I'm trying to make them sound crazier than they are, but because it's their loss. That's what sad means. If you're dealing with somebody who has no problem giving a wash down, on a daughter-in-law in public, and then when they heard, and even which is inappropriate, obviously, but even when they heard that the daughter-in-law was offended, all they have to say was, "There's no reason that you should take it personal. Let's get over this." It's very sad. I think it's important to understand it's not about you. It's about them. Again, not because they're bad people, not because you should look down at them or stay away from them. Even it's just sad. You just have to realize you're sometimes blessed with being more sensitive to other people and knowing how to own up even when you didn't really do anything wrong. And some people just don't have that. Now, I think everyone should work on it, and I'm not exempting anyone. Who am I to I'm not telling anyone they should or shouldn't. Nobody's absolved of having to own up, but that this is what it is. There are people who just can't do it. And when they behave this way and they communicate this way, it says something about them, not about you. So it's still hurtful. I'm not saying it's not hurtful, but it's important to just shift and remember, you're telling me that there's something wrong with you when you talk to me like that. It's not about me. I remember a story, I think I heard this from Rabbi Shimon. I don't remember where it was, but somebody was talking in a besmedrash in public against a certain Gudel B'Yisrael, a certain tzaddik. And he was talking negatively about this Talmid Chochem, whatever it is. And there was an older Chassidish Yid, I don't remember who it was, and he said, and he calls out to this person, "If you have problems, why are you telling everyone about it?" So the guy looked at him, he didn't understand, what do you mean? He said, "If you have problems, why are you telling everyone about it?" He said, "Well, which problems am I telling you? There's nothing about me." So he quoted one of the tzaddikim, touched, "Shulach Yudah b'shleim of chilul b'risoi." Somebody's talking against a tzaddikim, it means that he's chilul b'risoi. It means that he's not ugehitin. He doesn't behave properly. So he said, if you're talking negatively about this Talmid Chochem, this tzaddik in public, all you're telling everyone is that you have problems. You're announcing your problems. Don't do that. Now, I don't know if that was enough to make that person quiet, but the idea is that sometimes people express themselves and communicate and behave in a way that they're basically telling people, I have a problem. Now, if somebody would hang a sign on his head and say, I'm a problematic person, I have a personality disorder, I didn't take my medication today, I'm in therapy, I'm on my fourth marriage, if somebody like that would hurt you in public or embarrass you, I think you'd realize, okay, listen, I bumped into the wrong person. It's not nice to be around this person, but it's about him. Now, again, I don't want to chaz v'shalom put your mother-in-law in that category. I have no idea who she is. I don't think everyone is that problematic. My point was just that when you make the example bigger, everyone understands, okay, so somebody who has a lot of problems and hurts my feelings, I can handle it. It's only when it looks even and you take it very seriously because you don't realize, or sometimes you think maybe it is about me, it's not about me, they get you to question yourself. And that's what happens. So, I think that, first of all, it definitely becomes easier to handle when you realize that sometimes a person is limited. They're not crazy, they're not bad, there's no bad intentions, they can still be very good people and do a lot of good. And they could even be capable of understanding it when it comes to someone else. But when it comes to themselves, they don't get it. It's sad. It's sad to see somebody who can't get it. Now, there are people who, when you tell to them nicely, they could get it, and there's a way to respond. And sometimes, like in this case, you see that as nice as you try, it doesn't work. Okay? You learned a thing or two. People sometimes get so stuck on trying to communicate with logic, trying to get a point across, and they say it again, it didn't work, so they get more frustrated. Why is that person not explaining it? So I'll write it in a letter to my mother-in-law, not going. So I'll ask my husband to say it, also not going. So I'll tell I'll tell my roof, to tell my shver, to tell my... At some point, you just have to... It's not going. If it's not going, it's not going. I was talking to a guy from Argentina. So his kids speak English only, but him and his wife both speak Spanish. And so he's telling me that whenever he argues with his wife, he argues in Spanish. Okay? He doesn't want his kids to understand. Okay? And then he's telling you about the different arguments he has with his wife, where she said something hurtful, and he's trying to explain to her that he was hurt by it. It's a similar idea. And she doesn't get it, and it's getting louder and louder, and the kids see them fighting, but they don't understand what they're saying. Okay, so, and this is just going on and on. He's telling me all these different kind of debates and arguments that go nowhere with his wife. I said, it's so interesting. Why do you think that your kids don't understand it? What do you mean? Because they don't understand Spanish. I said, how do you know? Maybe one day they'll pick up on it. No, you can't pick up on it. You don't get it. You don't get it. You hear a language that you have no idea, no way to figure it out. I said, when are you going to realize that your wife understands your logic just like your kids understand your Spanish? In other words, to you, it seems obvious that Spanish they don't get, but she'll understand what I'm saying. How long are you going to talk to her in a certain way till you realize that she's not getting it? You can stop. You can stop explaining yourself. You can stop being defensive. You can stop asking her why she's doing things like that. I could teach you how to say things that you could understand, but this is not working. It's amazing how sometimes we could do something again and again, and because logically I would expect her to understand it, so I'm going to keep on doing it till she does. But with my kid, I'm not expecting. I think it's almost the same thing. Now, it's interesting because sometimes when you'll say something and you're not waiting for the person to agree with you, you're just looking to assert your position or your feeling, that they could hear. They might not agree. And this is where some people are mistaken. When you tell someone, I was really hurt by your comment, please don't say it again, okay? And you're waiting for them to say, oh, I'm sorry, I hurt your feelings, I will not say it again. That's where they're getting stuck, because you're imposing it on them. As opposed to when you tell someone, I'm sure you didn't mean anything, I was hurt by yesterday's comments, I hope it won't happen again, and you just walk away, you're not looking for them to have to agree. They heard it. They heard it. So sometimes you'll do enough good by just expressing yourself and saying how you feel without making it look like you're waiting for them to agree or to nod along or to even apologize. So I think that sometimes it is the right thing to do if that much they could handle. I love coming to Simchas. When I hear these kind of complaints, it just takes me over. It's my own issue. I hope it's not going to happen again because I really want to be there. You're not saying it in a way that makes it sound like you're waiting for someone to say, so do you get it? Hello, do you get it? Like what happened? You're not waiting for that. And sometimes it's important. If people can't handle that either, then they're even more limited. But I think that part is often important. I think it's important also to realize, don't conclude that somebody doesn't love you or care about you because they're limited. That's it. Sometimes you're living with someone who really loves you dearly and really cares for you and really means well and really is a good person and will do anything for you. And they're sometimes limited in realizing, how they sound or how they sounded or understanding, what they did wrong. I think it's just not something to take out of context and start making those conclusions and implications of, oh, this person must really hate me. It's much not like that, and that's why I see it. That's why that's why I talk about it as a limitation. It's a personal thing that some people get stuck on, and not necessarily anything about you. But back to the reactions. I want to go again. Just talk about how to react when because your question really is, what do I do in the future, right? What do I do when somebody attacks me like that? For the most part, you don't respond in the moment. Even when there's good responses, and even when there are things that somebody will be able to hear, it's not in the moment. In the moment, it's so little that somebody could hear. There's so little that somebody can hear. And sometimes you're getting people stuck long term when they're in the moment and you're challenging them, and in their mind, they're seeing themselves as being challenged by you, and you're not getting it, and you're wrong, and you're arguing with them, and now they can't come out of it an hour later. As opposed to somebody who just saw you take the insults and not say anything, and sometimes an hour later they're feeling very bad about themselves, and they'll call you, and they'll say, I'm sorry. So sometimes not only doesn't it help, but you're actually making it worse when somebody now has to stick up for their own position, and you hurt me, and you said that, and why'd you answer like that, and etc. So like I said, sometimes it's good to say nothing, because some people can't handle anything. Sometimes you're allowed to talk about yourself, and express yourself, and only about yourself, and nothing about that other person. Whatever you want to do, you could decide. I'm talking in terms of this whole relationship over here. You want to go to your in-laws, you don't want to go to your in-laws. You could decide. I think if your attitude or goal is to really teach her a lesson, which is something that you mentioned between the lines, how does one get across the message? She'll only understand big steps. I think this is the part where sometimes we just have to recalculate our goals. And I mentioned it in the share that I said about criticism. When you want to say something or do something, always remember, what's your goal? Your goal is to get the message across. Sometimes that's not a good goal. Sometimes it's not going to happen. Sometimes it will. But you have to realize, what's your goal? If your goal is to stay away because you don't want to be hurt by someone, you can stay away. If your goal is to go and be strong and deal with it differently going forward, you can do that too. But you have to decide on your own what you want to do. If your goal or attitude is to really fix the other person and teach them and educate them and control how they're going to be to you and things like that, very often it's not. It just makes people more frustrated and more resentful when they see they're not getting there. So I think it's sad, but sometimes you have to decide what you want to do. Now there are those people who, for the sake of peace, of the family, peace of the whole mishpucha, for the sake of being respectful to in-laws, very important, very big mitzvah. Obviously, it's your husband's parents. If you want to tolerate difficult behavior or a challenging relationship, very often it's the right thing to do. Now, again, it's only if you decided that you want to and you want to be strong. I think that's important. Sometimes it's just the right thing. Sometimes it's just worth it. If somebody makes a decision, then they're doing it for a different reason. If you go into a relationship, you go to a simcha, you spend Shabbos with a certain family, whatever it is, and you know that person might be hurting you, but you go in strong. You know what? It's not about me. And if they see the hurtful comments, I'll look the other way. I'll look at my husband. I'll look at my paper that I prepared myself. I'll turn to Hashem and I'll say it for the. If you go into it like that, then you're ready for it, and you don't get as offended, obviously, and you know that you're doing this even at that price that it might be difficult. But when you go in, and this time I'll do it this way, and this time I did that, and I missed that simcha, so now they're sure not going to do it, and the whole time you're just trying to get even, and a lot of times it just fails, and people get more and more frustrated. Now, there's a lot that you could do, to resolve your own emotions about this. You talk about nights that you're crying, and a week later you're hurt, right? There are people you could talk to. There are ideas that you could try. I'm not looking to sales it, but I often mention just the EFT, the therapy that I have a course on, for example. Everyone has their thing that works for them. And it's important. It's important for everyone to have a thing that calms them down, regardless of who's hurting you. Regardless of how you're going to deal with that person or the relationship, it's always good to have something that works for you. Works for you. Talking to Hashem, talking to a friend, venting, power talk, whatever. Any idea that works for you is good to have. It's good to have an idea that works for you when somebody's challenging to you. It's important to make sure that this never gets in the way of your showing bias, ever. Don't ever use it against your husband. It's not about him. Even if somewhere along the line you decide to deal with things differently than he does, don't let this get in between the two of you. And like I always say, it's good to have who to ask. You want to have someone to talk to. You want to have someone who's going to guide you properly so you know, A, if you're doing the right thing or not, by yes going or not going to parents, or saying something or not saying something to parents, or anyone, and having the confidence to do it. Sometimes, if you ask someone and you get a certain guidance, you do things with confidence, it comes across better and stronger. And if you don't get the guidance, then you're busy doubting yourself, and you don't know what to do. So it's also a very important part. So I want to summarize. I started off by saying, I think it's very important to remember that part as well. There are many relationships where instead of staying far away, you could get closer and be more respectful and figure out ways to really, find a way to make it work in a way that the person will be nicer to you. There are definitely a lot of such things, and sometimes staying far because you're afraid is just working against you. It's not allowing you to build that relationship that could be built. So I'm saying it because I don't want you to think that I'm writing off your mother-in-law as a difficult person who there's no hope for, and you have to figure out how to tolerate. Lav dafka. You'd be surprised. There are people that when you figure out how to do it and you do it even better and better, you can definitely avoid a lot of this. On the other hand, sometimes you are dealing with somebody who's extremely difficult. It's not a secret, and there are such people. And the right perspective is it's about them and not about me. And often that's what helps people, get on and not care as much, even though it's hurtful. And the third thing is knowing how to react, knowing how to not react in the moment, but not being afraid of the attack, not thinking that you have to react. And then knowing if and when you could say something about yourself and express yourself and be clear about yourself. And trying your best to make the right move and the right decision about how you're going to deal with something. In a way that when you do it with the right attitude. You do it regardless of what's going to happen. You do it because this is what you decided to do and this is what you were guided to do. And with Hashem's help, that's going to make a lot of this easier. So, like we started off with, Hashem is the ultimate Goimel Dalim. Hashem is able to be nice to everyone, even when they don't deserve it. If you want to emulate Hashem and be nice to somebody and be close to somebody even when they don't deserve it, it's a wonderful thing. It really is. To expect that other people should be nice even when it is deserved, sadly, some people just don't have that. So I think we have to sometimes have this double standard of, I'm going to be nice to my mother-in-law. I'm going to tolerate her comments even when she's totally out of bounds. I'm going to still be respectful. I'm going to try to win her over, even though I don't have to. And I'll try to judge her favorably even if I see she can't. And when I see she can't, I'll see it as a deficiency or a limitation that she has, and not chas v'shum that she's a bad person. If you could get there and you could do it right, then I think it's a wonderful thing. And if you can't, then you have to learn how to do things otherwise, also in a very respectful way, obviously, with the right amount of guidance. And I hope that with Hashem's help, by understanding each other, we could always get along even with people that are very difficult. And like my book says, get along with everyone, even those you find most challenging, and live together b'hava, arva, shalom, v'rayos.